Higher Secondary, Second Year, English, Unit 1, Prose, Two Gentlemen of Verona, written by A.J. Cronin. Here's a story about love, devotion, sacrifice, sincerity, and maturity displayed by two little boys in their actions to save the life of their sister who suffers from tuberculosis of the spine. Read the story to find out how their actions give a new hope for humanity. As we drove through the foothills of the Alps, two small boys stopped us on the outskirts of Verona. They were selling wild strawberries. Don't buy, warned Luigi, our cautious driver. You will get much better fruit in Verona. Besides, these boys, he shrugged his shoulders to convey his disapproval of their shabby appearance.
Shrug. Raise one's shoulders slightly and momentarily.
One boy had on a worn jersey and cut-off khaki pants. The other a shortened army tunic gathered in loose folds about his skinny frame. Yet, gazing at the two little figures, with the brown skins, tangled hair and dark earnest eyes, we felt ourselves strangely attracted.
Tunic means a loose outer garment without sleeves.
My companion spoke to the boys, discovered that they were brothers. Nicola, the elder, was 13. Jacopo, who barely came up to the door handle of the car, was nearly 12. We bought the biggest basket and then set off toward town. Next morning, coming out of our hotel, we saw our friends bent over shoe shine boxes beside the fountain in the public square, doing brisk business. We watched for a few moments, then as trade slackened we went over. They greeted us with friendly faces.
Slackened means reduced.
I thought you picked fruit for a living, I said. We do many things, sir. Nicola answered seriously. He glanced at us hopefully. Often we show visitors through the town, to Juliet's tomb, and other places of interest. All right, I smiled. You take us along. As we made the rounds, my interest was again provoked by their remarkable demeanor. They were childish enough, and in many ways quite artless. Jacopo was lively as a squirrel. Nicola's smile was steady and engaging. Yet in both these boyish faces there was a seriousness which was far beyond their years.
Demeanor, appearance and behavior. Artless, innocent, guileless.
In the week which followed we saw them frequently, for they proved extremely useful to us. If we wanted a pack of American cigarettes, or seats for the opera or the name of good restaurant, Nicola and Jacopo could be relied upon to satisfy our needs. What struck one most was their willingness to work. During these summer days, under the hot sun, they shined shoes, sold fruit, hawked newspapers, conducted tourists round the town, and ran errands.
Hawk means selling things crying out loudly or going from place to place.
One night, we came upon him in the windy and deserted square, resting on the stone pavement beneath the lights. Nicholas sat upright, tired. A bundle of unsold newspapers lay at his feet. Jacopo, his head resting upon his brother's shoulder, was asleep. It was nearly midnight. Why are you out so late, Nicola? Waiting for the last bus from Padua. We shall sell all our papers when it comes in. Must you work so hard? You both look rather tired. We are not complaining, sir.
Deserted, uninhabited, unoccupied.
But next morning, when I went over to the fountain to have my shoes shined, I said, Nicola, the way you and Jacopo work, you must earn quite a bit. You spend nothing on clothes. You eat little enough. When I see you have a meal, it's usually black bread and figs. Tell me, what do you do with your money? He colored deeply under his sunburn, and then grew pale. He looked to the ground.
You must be saving up to emigrate to America, I suggested. He looked at me sideways, spoke with an effort. We should greatly like to go to the States, but here, at present, we have other plans. What plans?
Emigrate. Take up citizenship of another country.
He smiled uncomfortably. Just plans, sir, he answered in a low voice. Well, I said, we're leaving on Monday. Is there anything I can do for you before we go? Nicola shook his head, but suddenly Jacopo said, Sir, he burst out, every Sunday we make a visit to the country, to Polita, 30 kilometers from here. Usually we hire bicycles. But tomorrow, since you are so kind, you might send us in your car. I had already told Luigi he might have the Sunday off. However, I answered, I'll drive you out myself. There was a pause. Nicola was glaring at his young brother in vexation. We could not think of troubling you, sir. It won't be any trouble. He bit his lip, then, in a rather put-out tone, he said, very well.
Vexation means annoyance.
The following afternoon we drove to the tiny village set high upon the hillside. I imagined that our destinations would be some humble dwellings. But, directed by Jacopo, we drew up at a large red-roofed villa, surrounded by a high stone wall. I could scarcely believe my eyes, and before I could recover breath my two passengers had leaped from the car. We shall not be long, sir. Perhaps only an hour. Maybe you'd like to go to the cafe in the village for a drink. They disappeared beyond the corner of the wall. After a few minutes I followed. I found a grilled side entrance and, determinedly, rang the bell. A pleasant-looking woman with steel-rimmed spectacles appeared. I blinked as I saw that she was dressed in the white uniform of a trained nurse. I just brought two small boys here. Ah, yes. Her face lit up. She opened the door to admit me. Nicola and Jacopo, I will take you up. She led me through a cool, tiled vestibule into the hospital, for hospital the villa had become. At the door of a little cubicle the nurse paused, put her finger to her lips, and with a smile bade me look through the glass partition.
Vestibule means lobby.
The two boys were seated at the bedside of a girl of about 20 who, propped up on pillows, wearing a pretty lace jacket, was listening to their chatter, her eyes soft and tender. One could see at a glance her resemblance to her brother's. A vase of wild flowers stood on her table, beside a dish of fruit and several books.
Chatter. A series of short, quick, high-pitched sounds.
Won't you go in? The nurse murmured. Lucia will be pleased to see you. I shook my head and turned away. I felt I could not bear to intrude upon this happy family party. But at the foot of the staircase I drew up and begged her to tell me all she knew about these boys.
Intrude. Enter without permission.
She was eager to do so. They were, she explained, quite alone in the world, except for this sister, Lucia. Their father, a widower, a well-known singer, had been killed in the early part of the war. Shortly afterward a bomb had destroyed their home and thrown the three children into the streets. They had always known a comfortable and cultured life. Lucia had herself been training as a singer and they had suffered horribly from near starvation and exposure to the cold winter. For months they had barely kept themselves alive in a sort of shelter they built with their own hands amidst the rubble. Then for 3 years the Germans ruled the city. The boys grew to hate the Germans. When the resistance movement began secretly to form, they were among the first to join. When the war was over, and we had peace at last, they came back to the beloved sister. And they found her suffering from tuberculosis of the spine. She paused, took a quick breath. Did they give up? I do not have to answer that question. They brought her here, persuaded us to take her into the hospital. In the 12 months she has been our patient, she has made good progress. There is every hope that one day she will walk and sing again. Of course, everything is so difficult now, food so scarce and dear, we could not keep going unless we charged a fee. But every week, Lucia's brothers have made the payment. She added simply, I don't know what they do, I do not ask. Work is scarce in Verona, but whatever it is, I know they do it well. Yes, I agreed, they couldn't do it better. I waited outside until the boys rejoined me, and then drove them back to the city. They sat beside me, not speaking. For my part, I did not say a word. I knew they would prefer to feel that they had safely kept their secret. Yet the devotion had touched me deeply. War had not broken their spirit. Their selfless action brought a new nobility to human life, gave promise of a greater hope for human society.
About the author.
Archibald Joseph Cronin, 1896-1981, was a Scottish novelist, dramatist and physician. A doctor by training, Cronin was one of the most renowned storytellers of the 20th century. Many of his stories have emerged from his medical career and are noted for the narrative skill, deep social conscience and finely drawn characters. Cronin's books were not only bestsellers but some of them, such as The Citadel and The Keys of the Kingdom, were made into successful films and were adapted for radio and television. His novella Country Doctor was adapted for a long-running BBC radio and TV series.
Answer the following questions in 1 or 2 sentences, each based on your understanding of the story. Who did the narrator meet at the outskirts of Verona? The narrator met 2 boys selling wild strawberries at the outskirts of Verona. Why did the driver not approve of the narrator buying fruit from the boys? The 2 boys had a shabby appearance. They were wearing old and worn-out clothes. So, the driver did not approve of the narrator buying fruits from the boys. The boys did not spend much on clothes and food. Why? They had to save money for medical treatment of their sister. So, they did not spend much on clothes and food. Were the boys saving money to go to the States? How do you know? No, they were not saving money to go to the States. They told the narrator that they would like to go to the States, but they had other plans. Why did the author avoid going to Lucia's room? The author avoided going to Lucia's room because he did not want to intrude into the privacy of the brothers and sister. What was Lucia suffering from? Lucia was suffering from tuberculosis of the spine. What made the boys join the resistance movement against the Germans? The boys joined the resistance movement against the Germans because they hated the Germans as they destroyed their family. What made the boys work so hard? The boys worked so hard to pay for their sisters' medical bills and food. Answer the following questions in 3 or 4 sentences each. Describe the appearance of Nicola and Jacopo. One boy was wearing an old damaged jersey and cut-off khaki pants. The other boy was slim and was wearing a shortened army tunic gathered in loose folds. Both of them had uncombed hair and brown skin. Nicola, the elder, was 13 years old, and Jacopo was 12 years old. What were the various jobs undertaken by the little boys? During the summer days, under the hot sun, they shined shoes, sold fruits, hawked newspapers, conducted tourists around the town, and ran errands. How did the narrator help the boys on Sunday? When the boys requested the narrator to drive them to a village, he readily agreed and drew them to the tiny village Poletta set high upon the hillside. He also waited the boys to rejoin them and then drew them back to the city. Who took the other to the cubicle? A pleasant looking woman with steel rimmed spectacles was dressed in the white uniform of a trained nurse, took the other to the cubicle. Describe the girl with whom the boys were talking to in the cubicle. The two boys were talking to their sister named Lucia. She was about 20. She was wearing a pretty lace jacket and she was listening to their chatter. Her eyes were soft and tender. She had a resemblance to her brothers, who took good care of her. Recount the untold suffering undergone by the siblings after they were rendered homeless. After the siblings were rendered homeless, they suffered horribly from near starvation and exposure to the cold winter. For months, they lived in the shelter made of broken building walls and bricks. The boys hated Germans and joined the resistance movement. After the war, they got back to their sister and found her suffering from tuberculosis of the spine. The narrator did not utter a word and preferred to keep the secret to himself. Why? Substantiate the statement with reference to the story. The narrator had understood their character well, and he knew they wouldn't like to have sympathized. Therefore, he did not confront the boys and kept the secret to himself. Their spirit and selfless action brought a new nobility to human life. Answer the following in a paragraph of 100 to 150 words each. What was the driving force that made the boys do various jobs? When the boys and their sisters were rendered homeless in the war, they suffered horribly from starvation and exposure to cold winter. The boys found that their sister was suffering from tuberculosis of the spine. They took her to the hospital and persuaded the staff to take her into the hospital and look after her. In order to pay for her food, medicines, and a comfortable life, they had to do various jobs like shining shoes, sell fruits, hawk newspapers, conduct tourists around the town, and run errands. Despite facing so many problems in their early life, the boys did not lose hope. The brothers' positive approach and determination to get their sister cured had helped the staff treat her well. How was the family affected by the war? The siblings' mother died early in their life. Their father, who was a well-known singer, became victim of the early war. The children became homeless as their home got destroyed. They had always known a comfortable and cultured life, but after they were rendered homeless, they had suffered a lot from near starvation and exposure to the cold winter. For months, they had barely kept themselves alive in a sort of shelter they built with their own hands amidst the broken bricks. The boys had the Germans, as they were responsible for the ruin of their happy family. They stood against them as rebels. After the war, when they got back to their sister, they found her suffering from tuberculosis of the spine. It was another shock to those poor kids. Write a character sketch of Nicola and Jacopo. Nicola, the elder, was 13 years old, and Jacopo was nearly 12 years old. Both the siblings were very sincere and self-sacrificing. They did not spend much on their clothes and food. At such young age, they had shouldered the responsibilities of looking after their sister Lucia, who was suffering from tuberculosis of the spine. They were hardworking and they did various jobs such as selling fruits, shining shoes, hawking newspaper, working as tourist guides, and running their errands to pay the medical expenses for their sister. They were very honest and self reliant, as every week they paid the medical expenses at the hospital. They were secretive as they did not share their family problems to anyone.
What message is conveyed through the story Two Gentlemen of Verona? A.J. Cronin used the title Two Gentlemen of Verona promises hope for the society. The boys Nicola and Jacopo were devoted and sincere towards the cause of their sister's ailment. They were self sacrificing despite the harshness faced by them. This approach of theirs towards life shows positivity and nobility. Despite all the negativity in the world, like war, hatred, jealousy, rivalry, and selfishness, the boy's attitude indicated that goodness still persisted in some souls. It conveys the message that there is scope for the world, for all of us to become a better place one day.